Well, I'm standing here in the shadow of Palomar Observatory, which for most of my life was the biggest telescope in the world. I think it's down to the 15th or 16th now. To me, Mount Palomar Observatory was pretty much the holy temple of the human spiritual journey out into the larger cosmos. I know that might sound extreme, but I grew up with the romance of astronomy really flowing in my blood, and I entered the world of astrology really via the doorway of astronomy, amateur astronomy, looking through telescopes, reading about it, learning about it, and it was always a big part of my heart. I've found that very often in my world of astrology, my colleagues really don't seem to have much interest in the world of astronomy. And that's always amazed me. I had a really funny experience, sad experience, come to think of it, with a Muskogee elder, a gentleman named J.C. Eaglesmith, who was invited to speak along with me at an astrology conference in Oklahoma one time. And he recounted a story about how he had invited the astrologers at another gathering to come out and look at the sky with him at night and just marvel at the sky. And none of them wanted to. They were afraid of mosquitoes. So how sad that mosquitoes would keep astrologers from really consulting something that is so much more eloquent than an ephemeris or nowadays a computer screen. You look at the computer screen and you see a chart and you can learn a lot, you can be helpful, you can practice the craft of astrology, but when you simply look at the night sky and just let it hit you in all its magic and depth and wonder, a missing link of the astrological chain suddenly comes into existence again. That sense of being humbled before the vastness and the depth of this universe. I'm a very strong advocate of astrologers looking through telescopes or just looking through their eyes at the heavens and connecting their soul with that magic. I have a friend, an astronomer named Jim Mullaney, who's written for Sky and Telescope magazine. He's getting to be an older fella now. We've done a couple of programs together, and he made a wonderful observation. He called it the photon connection. Sounds like a Star Trek episode, but what he's talking about is how when you're looking at the sky through a telescope, literally photons, some of them having traveled for millions of years, are connecting with your eyeball. In my book, The Night Speaks, which is being reissued now, which I find very exciting, in one of the chapters I spoke of looking at a quasar through a telescope that I owned, 3C273, not a very romantic name, but the quasar was, I think, 1 billion light years away or something like that. I forget the exact number. It's in the book. And it's just absolutely astonishing to reflect that a photon, a literal photon, left that heart of a galaxy, that flaming, inexplicable, brightest mother of light in the universe, left that thing 1 billion years before and traveling at 186,000 miles a second for all that time, came to its final resting point right here in the retina of my left eye. When you connect with that and you realize you're having a physical relationship with this vast cosmos, it's the heart of astrology. It's the heart of astrology. People say the planets are so far away they can't affect us. 3C273 is so much further away from the planets that Pluto might as well be your underpants. So this notion that the planets, let alone the rest of the universe, are too far away to affect us, it's absolutely crazy. It's a completely empty idea. The simple reality that we can look into the sky, just naked eye, just look into the sky and see what might appear to be a bright star, and in fact it's the planet Jupiter, let's say, and you consider what's happening, energy, and I don't mean hippie energy, maybe I mean that too, but I mean electromagnetic energy, measurable energy, is coming from the cloud deck of Jupiter at the speed of light, crashing into your retina and creating measurable biochemical changes in your cerebrum. Just a fancy way of saying we can see it. The idea that the planets do not affect us is simply incorrect. Now, what I've just said does not prove astrology. Of course not. It has nothing to do with Gemini or Sagittarius or anything like that. But it does prove that we are in a physical relationship with the larger cosmos. Now, The Night Speaks was actually the fourth book that I had written. My Sky trilogy had already come out, and I realized I had written 3 how-to do astrology books, and it was about time to write a why to do astrology book, something about the soul of it, and also a book that would give people a rational basis for taking astrology seriously. The problem that we all encounter as astrologers is that we have this incredibly helpful, incredibly powerful system, but outside of the relatively small world of astrology, this fact is not really very known or appreciated. To the person in the street, astrology is often seen as something kind of silly. You have to be a little flaky to believe in it. And yet there are objective, scientific, rational reasons to believe in astrology. I wanted to spell them out as best I could in The Night Speaks, and I also wanted to be careful not to try to become a little scientist. I didn't want to lose that sense of the soul magic and the soul wonder that comes from simply looking at the sky. I want to honor the poetic arguments for believing in astrology, for living with astrology. I wanted to honor them equally with the rational and objective reasons. For all sorts of complicated and ultimately rather boring reasons, The Night Speaks disappeared for several years. I'm so delighted to be able to bring it back. I've essentially published it as I did originally back in the early 90s, although I've rewritten a few sections. The sunspot cycle plays a big role in the book, and I'd only carried that up to about 1990. So in the new edition of the book, I look at the sunspot cycle since then, right up into the present time. There was also a section in that book called The Year 2000, back when that was looming on the horizon, and part of that I've simply deleted because it seems like yesterday's newspapers, so to speak. The main part of that section of the book originally was about the Uranus-Neptune conjunction of the early 1990s, which has epical implications. And at the time I was writing the book, of course, it was still in the future. It was centered in about 92, 93. So I was able, in this current edition of the book, to kind of look back on it from the perspective of a quarter century of history and perspective. And so I've written probably 10 or 15,000 new words in The Night Speaks, and polished up some of the original text. And I'm just so happy to have it back in the family of Seven Paws Press books, and particularly happy to be able to put the book in the hands of some of the rising, young, fine astrologers who were, some of them, not even born at the time I wrote those words originally. So thank you.